Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. This is Point of View with Shirley, Cleester, Eula, and Merethah. This is Tuesday. It is the 14th of November, the year 2023. It's such a wonderful day, such a wonderful day. And I am so thankful to God for you, me, all of us. He's a wonderful God. He's an awesome God. He is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And I thank him, I thank him, I thank him. And for some reason, this camera is not wanting to do what it should do. Don't know why. It's not coming on. It's connected, but it's not coming on. So I don't understand that. But I'm going to go ahead. Today we are uh talking about to be or not to be. That is the question. And then the extension of that is, how can you finish if you don't get started? How can you finish if you don't start? How can you finish? To be or not to be? And to be or not to be, we know that's from Hamlet, Shakespeare's play Hamlet. And it's a question that they said Prince Hamlet, was asking himself. He was contemplating suicide. Do I live or do I die? Do I do this? Do I do that? And so one thing about it is, they said that he never decided what he was going to do, but evidently if he did not commit suicide, then he decided that he wouldn't do it. So he decided he would live. But there were some things that he wasn't clear on, and so he was doing a soliloquy, and they said a soliloquy is not a monologue, it's different. A soliloquy is when you're talking out loud to yourself. You're by yourself talking out loud to yourself, and then it doesn't matter even if other people are there, but you're just talking to yourself. To be or not to be, how can you finish if you don't start? So there are other things involved in this topic today, and I am so excited. I enjoyed studying this. I really enjoyed studying it, and I just regret that the camera is not coming on. I can go ahead and um, do my phone camera, but I just didn't want to go through all that. But hey, if I do, I have to do it. And if I don't, but you can hear me because I see that it's monitoring. So I'm thankful for that. Dear God, did I pray? If I didn't, let me go ahead and do it. Dear God, as I sit before you to speak, I pray to you that my soul you will keep. And if I should die before I finish, I pray to you, dear God, in the name of Jesus, that any outstanding sins will be forgiven. Amen. Point of View with Shirley, Cleester, Eula, and Merethah. To be or not to be, that is the question. How can you finish if you don't start? So let's just get right into that. And I have three sites that I'm going to today. I know one is Psychology Today, one is Psych Central, and one is Being. So there might be another one, to be or not to be. And have you ever asked yourself this? And I know many of us have. What should we do? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? What are we going to do? What am I going to do? And you have to make a decision one way or the other. And if you say you're undecisive, evidently you've made a decision because, hey, you're still here working on it. So you either did it or you didn't. All right. So let me get on with that. To be or not to be. And I found that whole um, speech, but I'm just going to go into this. This is Owlcation, Owlcation, and it's talking about it just a little bit, Hamlet by Shakespeare. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. What is the meaning of to be or not to be? What is the meaning of to be or not to be? So let's see what the meaning is. I tell you, I'm just disappointed in this camera. I'm going to try it one more time to see if it's going to do what it needs to do. See if it'll come on. I'm not sure, but I will see. To be or not to be? That is the question. All right. Hi, thank you so much for being with me. I'll go ahead and go with what I had chosen, to be or not to be. And I will read that. At avocation. What is the meaning of to be or not to be? Hamlet's famous quote, and we've heard it over and over and over again. Hamlet, to be or not to be speech. To be or not to be is one of the most famous lines in all English literature. It marks the beginning of Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, which is a soliloquy. So the speech and the line reflect some of the existential questions that Hamlet, the play, and Hamlet, the character, are interested in. And we know that Shakespeare wrote this play. So now, first, let's see a soliloquy. And I said something about that. A soliloquy is a speech made by one character. The speech does not actually represent spoken words, but the thoughts and feelings of the character speaking. Therefore, it is assumed that even if other characters were to listen in or on the character who is giving a soliloquy, as Polonius and Claudius do, they would not really hear the speaker, in this case, Hamlet. All right. So a soliloquy is different from a monologue because the speaker is alone on stage and is considered to be speaking to the audience. In a monologue, the speaker addresses an audience that does not interject or offer comments. Antony's speech from Julius Caesar and Henry V's speeches to his troops in Henry V are examples of monologues. A soliloquy is not to be confused with an aside, okay? An aside, like a soliloquy, represents words that a character speaks that are heard only by the audience and represent that character's thoughts or feelings. Unlike a soliloquy, an audience, uh, unlike a soliloquy, an aside is a brief statement usually uttered in the midst of dialogue. Also, asides, asides, are usually denoted by stage directions, while soliloquies are not. Okay, so now that we've done that part, we understand that very well. Now, so what does it mean? There are many meanings in Hamlet's speech, many. And he's trying to make a decision. He's trying to decide. He's trying his best to decide. So, what is meant in that speech? There are many meanings in the speech, and there are entire essays written on them and how they relate to the play as a whole. So, what the author here is offering are some generally accepted interpretations and observations of the speech. And the author here is Adam Coleman. And he just did this, just uploaded this on the 10th of this month, November, in this year, 2023. So this is very, very, very recent, very new. Okay, let's get on with it. Let's get on. So, number one, the speech represents Hamlet's contemplation of suicide. Okay? His contemplation of suicide. Hamlet questions whether it is a viable solution to his problem. So at least he's thinking about it, huh? And so we've talked about those suicide and violence and all that on here. So this will fit right in, and it could help someone, because the second part to this is, if you don't start, you won't finish. So there are other sides to this, okay? So just hold on, hang on with me, please. Hang on in here. Number 2, Hamlet contemplates killing Claudius. He wants revenge, but if Claudius goes to heaven, then killing will not avenge Hamlet's father. All right. So he's doing some deep thinking here, isn't he? I want to kill him, but what if he goes to heaven? What if he goes to heaven? Then he asks other questions. So, death is, you don't come back from that. So the third one is, the speech asks existential questions that have been bothering Hamlet. What happens after death? Is it better to act or to remain inactive? Is existence living, when meaning living, worth the pain? Why do miserable people continue to live? So he's got some, I think, some valid questions, and that can help us in these presentations we bring here. This is really good. It's opening up. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really, really appreciate you being here. I'm just so thankful that you are here, and I want to test my sound. I know that it is the sound is coming through. I know that it is. I'm just thankful that you're here with me. Now, let me do this. Okay. The sound. All right. So we did 3. The meaning of to be and not to be. There's questions. The speech and the play. Hamlet's soliloquy does not really advance the plot because Hamlet never decides to be or not to be. So for this reason, some versions of the play place the speech at different points in the play other than in Act 3, Scene 1. A critically acclaimed Russian film puts the speech at the play's beginning. All right, so another reason that the speech is often moved is the fact that Hamlet says death is the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. So this statement is somewhat puzzling. So we're going to get on to that. If you don't start, you won't finish. Okay, but this all fits in. Okay, this statement is somewhat puzzling since Hamlet has already spoken with his father's ghost. Okay, and then there's another little spin right here on this. However, Hamlet seriously questions whether the ghost is indeed his father or a devil of some kind. So he's not even sure if it's his father's ghost or if it's some kind of spirit that's messing with him. There is so much here to think about, so much here to uh, consider. This is full, and I am really, really happy to present this today. So he seriously questions whether the the ghost is indeed his father or a devil of some kind. So he's really not even sure of that. So Hamlet may indeed be deliberately ignoring the events of the play in order to make general existential observations rather than base the speech on his own rather unusual experience. So there are more of his soliloquies, but we're just talking about that one. So he didn't make up his mind. Uh, he didn't commit suicide, so it's to be or not to be. So evidently he made up his mind if he didn't kill himself, if he didn't kill Claudius. Uh, so we'll go on from there. Now, to remember the second part, if you don't start, you won't finish. To be or not to be, Hamlet was indecisive. He couldn't make up his mind. He could not make up his mind. So now I'm going to go to talking about this completion anxiety, talking about making up his mind. Hamlet didn't make up his mind as to whether he was going to commit suicide or not. Thank you so much for being with me. This camera is on the whatever, the blink or whatever it is. I just don't know about this camera. And so I'm thinking about maybe putting my phone here so you can see me. But wow, wowee. I don't like that, but I'm going to go on. I'm going on. So, what is the meaning of it? We're talking about completion now. Here we go. Hamlet, what should I do this or should I do that? Did I see this or is it something else? So he was just a little bit, seemed like confused on the issue, but he wanted to be sure. So, I think I want to. No, I'm going to go to psychology today first. To be or not to be, and then we'll come to Psych Central. So the question is, and this is really, really good because we're going to dig into some of the issues we've been talking about and the suicide, the insecurities, the low self-esteem, all of that builds into it. And you can see in Hamlet's speech, in that particular speech, how he was not sure and he was contemplating and didn't know whether he should or shouldn't. And he didn't do the major thing, which was he was contemplating on. So to be or not to be. So this doctor here, Ido Landau, PhD, to be or not to be, is that really the question? So we're getting to get into this now. Hamlet's famous question is limited, the doctor says, and misleading. And this was posted on the 29th of June in the year 2018. The famous line, according to Dr. Landau, this is his take on it, that begins Prince Hamlet's soliloquy in Shakespeare's Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. It's probably the most cited statement in all classical drama. Hamlet's question concerns suicide. You see, here we go. He considers whether to be, that is, in the mind, to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or alternatively, not to be, that is, to die, to sleep, and by asleep, to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to, H-E-I-R. We're getting into it, are we? To be or not to be, to do or not to do. Okay? And then we're going into it, said, so how can you finish if you don't start? There's a lot to think about here today. Thank you so much for being with me. Claiming that a question is wrong may sound odd. Surely answers can be wrong. Likewise, suppositions, views, claims, and assertions can be wrong. But can questions be wrong? Okay, Dr. Landau, take us on in there. In fact, questions can be wrong in several ways. An important one is this: questions are wrong when they presuppose is wrong, when what they presuppose is wrong, okay? What they take for granted to be the thing to do, okay? So an important one is this: questions are wrong when what they presuppose is wrong. So what they are settled on could be wrong, okay? All questions include two elements: something unknown and something presupposed. So if there were not something unknown about what we inquire, there would be no questioning. We would have nothing to ask about. However, if there is also not something presupposed on which we base the question, again, there would be no questioning. So here's an example, according to the doctor. If I ask you what the time now is, I presuppose in this question, among other things, that you have a watch, that you know to read time, and that there is such a thing as time. Okay, you get it? So when I was talking about that presuppose, you take for granted that it is. Okay? Now, he says, if I ask whether you got to work today on time, he said, I presuppose that you have work and that you need to get there by a certain hour. If I inquire about the cause of cancer, I presuppose that there is such a disease and that it has a cause. Wow. He is really breaking this down to be or not to be, okay? The presupposed component of a question may be correct or incorrect. So he said, if I asked at what hour you robbed the bank, I would probably presuppose in this question that you robbed the bank. Likewise, if I asked, and I'm the doctor's, okay, this is what he's saying. If I asked why you hate me, I would wrongly presuppose that you hate me. When questions are based on wrong presuppositions, the questions are wrong. Not only answers, views, and claims then can be wrong, questions can be wrong as well. So getting our questions right is very important, since wrong questions lead to wrong replies. However, since the presuppositions in question are often implicit, it is easy not to notice the wrongness of some of the questions we ask. Whoa, Nelly. Man, he is doing some deep, deep, deep thinking. So, what is implicit? It means implied, though not plainly expressed. All right. The presupposed component of a question may be correct or incorrect. Okay. So, he said, getting our questions right is very important. And I know I'm repeating this, but this is true because we know from experience, that if we ask a question, there's a certain way we can ask it that can, what is it? Oh gosh, require a certain answer a certain way. And I believe what he's saying, because people can ask questions in a way, and the way they ask them are wrong because they're trying to get the answer that they want, which could be something petty and malicious. All right. I believe I got that right. So he says, I think that Hamlet's to be or not to be question is also a wrong question. One wrong presupposition in it is that we can choose only between those two options. And this is what I really like about this. So the presupposition is that we can choose only between two options. These two options, what are they? To be or not to be. I like this. He said either to commit suicide or to continue to suffer the slings and arrows of fortune. In fact, however, there often is also a third option that needs to be thoroughly explored, okay? To be or not to be, okay? How can you finish if you don't start? So we're going to start something here today, all right? In fact, however, I really want to get some camera on here. I don't like this. Okay. There often is also a third option that needs to be thoroughly explored to improve life by changing the actions or circumstances that bring about the suffering. Now, this one, I'm going to say this again. He said, the people many times only consider the two, either to commit suicide, like Hamlet was thinking, or to continue to suffer the slings and arrows of fortune. But he said, there's often also a third option, and many times people don't think about this. Okay, it needs to be thoroughly explored. And what is that third option? To improve life by changing the actions or circumstances that bring about the suffering. Whoa. So the third option then is to continue living while decreasing suffering. In other words, it is to diminish or stop the suffering, not by ending life, but by altering it. And it even fundamentally, if needed, okay? Not to stop the life, hear that? But to alter the life. So one decreases suffering by improving life rather than destroying it. One can lessen significantly or even discontinue one's overall sufferings in various ways, such as dealing with the causes of suffering, moving away from them, making oneself less sensitive to suffering, dealing with one's perfectionist tendencies, or compensating for the suffering there is in life by creating and augmenting joyful or worthy aspects of life. So it doesn't just have to be the two-part question. There's a third part to it. Sometimes even a fourth or a fifth. So, but the main thing is you can alter and move out of that space you're in and go into a more positive space and change it for your better, okay? To return to Shakespeare's metaphor, in order not to suffer slings and arrows, it is sometimes sufficient, for example, to move out of their way. So it is tragic that some people prefer to destroy their lives completely rather than to try to alter them in some of the many ways that it is possible to do so. Yes, it is. You see why I'm so excited about this? I'm so excited. So in Shakespeare's Hamlet 2, TOO, there are more options than either to kill oneself or to continue to suffer. But this is a fictional tale, okay? This is a fictional tale. That means it's not true. All right. So when reading it, while noting again how narrowly Hamlet conceived his options, Dr. Landau is saying, I am often reminded of a historical case of a real prince who committed suicide. And he said, Rudolph, Crown Prince of Austria, 1858 to 1889, was a son of Franz Joseph I, Emperor of Austro-Hungary, and he lived from 1830 to 1916, and heir to the throne. He was married for political reasons, and we've heard of all this, okay? And following his father's wishes, to a Belgian princess whom soon he found he did not love at all. For political reasons, he had to marry this lady, okay? However, his father and social conventions disallowed a divorce and marriage to a woman he didn't to a life to be married to a woman he did love and who loved him back. And her name is Marie Vetsera. So this was not the type of life he wanted. Rudolph chose to commit suicide rather to continue living like that. Vetsera agreed, and they were found dead together on January 30th, 1889. So for political reasons, he had to marry a woman that he soon found out. I don't know how soon, but he did not love her. But in order to have political ties between the countries, he was married, had to marry this lady. When he found out that he did not love her, he loved a lady, wanted to be with that lady, but they would not allow him to get a divorce. So he and the lady both died together. Okay, he committed suicide, and evidently she did too, because they found them together on January 30th in 1889. And I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about people like personally uh, a lot, you know, just say their names. But I am so glad, according to what we've heard, that Harry chose to get Meghan out of whatever was going on there, if it was detrimental to them, their health, their lives, their children, and all. And so it's such a shame that Rudolph did not think to do that or could not have. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Rudolph, okay? Now that was an odd decision. It was an odd decision. If Rudolph's life was indeed too bad to continue as it was, perhaps there was a way of discontinuing that way of living rather than discontinuing life altogether. For example, Rudolph could have left the court with his beloved Marie, traveled somewhere, learned a profession, worked and lived with and loved Marie. He had that choice, but evidently he didn't feel like he had another choice. So, of course, doing this would have shaken the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but his suicide also shook the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Leaving the court would have also caused much sorrow to his parents. Yet, his suicide also caused much sorrow to his parents. So moving to, say, France, learning a trade, and working would have surely been a big change. Death, too, however, is a big change. Instead of erasing his old life and turning it into death, he could have erased his old life and molded it into a new type of life. It may be difficult, but facing difficulties is sometimes a good thing. And I want people to hear this. I want people to hear this. Sometimes facing difficulties is a good thing. And if he indeed loved Marie Vetsera so much that he couldn't live without her, this option would have enabled them to live together, to get out of that environment. But you know that he had so much pressure on him. So he felt that that was the only way that they could be together. I believe that's how he felt. So he did complete that task, okay? So note, the doctor is saying, that I am not claiming here that it is certain that Rudolph would have found the first alternative way of living he would have tried out as sufficiently good. But he said, I suggest that it is amazing that he did not even try any alternative before opting for death. And right here, how do we really know that he did not try something else? How do we know that he might have tried more than once to get out of the situation, but it seemed that every way that he turned and tried, he was not successful? How do we know? So, moreover, the doctor said, if I found my present way of living unbearable, and an alternative one would have also been unsatisfactory, I surely would have tried out several other alternatives as well. Perhaps if the things didn't turn out well in the first option, they would have turned out quite well in the second or third try. Yet Rudolph didn't try even one option, and that I can say we do not know for sure, okay? Because sometimes people say, I tried this, I tried that, and nothing seems to work. And then they end up doing the most horrible thing. And so, what we're doing with Point of View, with Greater Gospel Temple, with our lives, is trying to encourage people and let them know that you do have a choice. You do have a choice that you can make. You have more than one choice to make your life better. Don't give up on life. You can make it better. There are other options, other ways. Just explore them. Explore them. So he and Marie Wetzera noted only the two options Hamlet recites: continuing life as it is or dying. The possibility of a third option, that of changing life and thereby trying to improve it, seems not to have even entered their considerations at all. And we don't know what they went through before they decided to do that, because there are some horrible, horrible, horrible circumstances that enter into people's lives. People can do things, other people can, that will make people absolutely miserable and feel that they have no hope. But I want to tell you today that there is another way. There is a way out where you don't have to take your life. You don't have to take anybody else's life. You don't have to give up on life, because there are other options. There are other alternatives where you can live your life and be happy. So the doctor said, I suggested above that people can often take action and change the condition in which they are. We're talking about to be or not to be. And then also the other part of that, there's a question, or no, there's a statement. If you don't start, how can you finish? Okay? You've got to do something. Okay? That was a third option besides either suffering or suicide. There are more options, however. For example, a fourth option that is sometimes useful is just to wait. Sometimes there is no need to actively change conditions because they change by themselves. Life is often dynamic. Just as it has changed in the past, it is likely to change also in the future. And though there are many of us, all of us who have lived, we've seen change after change after change after change, and right before our eyes, things are changing. Often people think of suicide when they are in a crisis. When they are in a crisis. A crisis is defined as a temporary low between two plateaus. It does not continue forever. And if only we could get that to people and let them know a crisis is defined, it's only a temporary low between two plateaus. It does not continue forever. The trick is to persist through it. So those who make it to its end are much relieved when it's over, and those who can't contain its sink, okay? But the difficulty is that within a crisis, it is hard for people to identify that they are in one, and that eventually there will come a future in which they'll just look back at it, since in a crisis, people often lose perspective. Yes. So sometimes we don't know if we're in a crisis. The difficulty is that within a crisis, it's hard for people to identify that they are in one many times, okay? So it's all too easy within a crisis to fall into feeling that this is the way things will continue on forever. That from now on, things will always be bad. And there are so many people who have, it seems like, what is that? There's a saying that I wouldn't have, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. We've heard that saying. But hang in there. Tell people to hang in there. There is another way. There is a better way. So the doctor says, I have recently talked with new parents of a 3-month-old baby. They are good parents, but they told me in tears that they feel that their lives have been taken away from them. They felt that they would never enjoy again an uninterrupted good night's sleep, would never return to reading, jogging, or sex, and would never have time for themselves. And we parents know how that is, but I never thought anything like that. I had my babies and I was happy to take care of my babies. So then we know the times came when things changed, and sometimes, the what is it? I won't call it a crisis, but things have come up where you might have didn't know what to do about this. You had to get some help on this or whatever. Sometimes the children got sick, things just when they had problems, trials and tribulations, and they had to come to you, and you had to be in a position where you could take that in and then comfort them also. So through their heartache and heartbreak, you had heartache and heartbreak too. And all of that is a part of it. And sometimes it seems, when is it going to end? Is there going to be an end to it? But I don't remember ever suffering and regretting. I never did that I have my children, I thank God for that, because there are some parents now who are in a state of mind, what is they call postpartum depression. And some people in denial. They don't want the children. Oh, just so much. They feel something like these parents, but at least these parents went and got some help, okay? So there are so many things lurking out here. And just like Hamlet, he was confused. Did I see my daddy, my dead daddy, or was that some kind of spirit? People are confused, okay? And so it's up to us to do all we can to help them. I was surprised, the doctor says, by their surprise when I pointed out that with time, the baby, like all babies, will grow up, will busy himself with his friends, and they will have difficulties in waking him up to go to school. So many things are temporary, including our condition or mood now, even if, when in it, we find it hard to believe that this is the case. Because when we are in it, sometimes we wonder, is there ever going to be an end? Is there ever going to be an end? But oh yes, from experience, we have seen it. We have seen it over and over and over and over and over again. And here we are, praise God. So to be or not to be then is not the question. It presents only two alternatives to choose from when, in fact, there are more. It is important to consider all plausible alternatives before making a choice. The to be or not to be question is infelicitous in overlooking, even ignoring some such significant, worthwhile alternatives. My goodness. And I looked up that word infelicitous, and I'm going to go back there and bring it so that I can bring it to you. I know you might already know, but some of us didn't. The meaning of infelicitous, okay? It is unfortunate as an adjective, inappropriate, okay? Inappropriate. So the to be or not to be question is inappropriate in overlooking, even ignoring some such significant and worthwhile alternatives. To be or not to be. So Dr. Landau is a professor of philosophy at the University of Haifa. All right. Now, let's go. Oh, we're doing so well, aren't we? Thank you so much for being with me. I'm just so disappointed in this camera, but hey, what can I do? What can I do? Just continue to do what I'm doing. And I thank you so much for being with me. To be or not to be, how can you finish if you don't start? Let's get into that. Completion anxiety, getting over the fear of getting tasks done. We're in Psych Central, okay? So this was medically reviewed by Vera Sarah Pauli, excuse me. All right. And it's by Janelle Cox. And this was published on the 19th of September in the year 2022. To be or not to be. How can you finish if you don't get started? So that's the question. Should I or should I not? Should I? You see where it's fitting in? Should I? Should SHOULD or should I not? Do you have anxiety about finishing your work? With a few strategies, you can learn how to overcome your fear and finish what you started. So those two questions, to be or not to be, there's more of an answer than just to try to answer those. Do I do it or do I not? Okay? All right. Why can it be so hard to complete the first or last 10% of a task? Perhaps just when you thought you were near completion, something happens and it feels nearly impossible to get your work done. Now, if this sounds all too familiar, then you know how overwhelming it can feel to get knee deep in a task but not bring yourself to complete it. Why do I do this, you may ask? If you typically don't finish what you start on time or at all, there may be a reason for it. You can learn how to overcome these roadblocks and prevent your anxiety from causing you to procrastinate completing your projects. Procrastinate, we know that means to put it off. Sometimes you can put it off for a later time. Sometimes you don't even go back and pick it up again. So what is completion anxiety? And we know that Hamlet was anxious. He had a form of anxiety. To be or not to be? Should I die? Should I live? Should I kill the guy or should I not? What must I do? Should I finish my project or should I just leave it alone? Completion anxiety is the fear that you will not be able to complete a task or the worry that you will not perform well enough to meet the standards set by others, says Dr. Nathan Brandon, a licensed psychologist in San Francisco. All right. So causes that interfere with completing tasks. Anxiety. We can be so full of anxiety sometimes till you be like, what is his name? Hamlet. Don't know whether to go or come, whether you're going or coming, just don't know. So if you're known to procrastinate, you're not alone. According to research conducted by psychology professor Dr. Joseph Ferrari, about 20% of adults in the United States are chronic procrastinators. So if you feel your anxiety and aversion to completing tasks are interfering with completing your projects, it may be due to low self-esteem is one of them. Do you fear being negatively judged or evaluated once your task is completed? If you do, this is when completion anxiety can occur, says Ellie Borden, a psychotherapist in Toronto. Fear and low self-esteem often go hand in hand, and we can tell that Hamlet had signs of this. So, a 2017 study suggests that if you have anxiety, you're more prone to low self-esteem and can find it difficult to overcome your negative thinking patterns. See how that fits in? So, if your thinking is fear-based, there's a typo here, then you may have a hard time finishing your task. Fear of failure. Another reason you may avoid completing tasks is a fear of failure. At some point in your life, you may have received the message that you were not good enough or capable enough, says Dr. Jason Drake, a licensed clinical social worker in Katy, Texas. How about that? So, worrying can lead to procrastination and keep you from accomplishing your tasks and goals, say experts in a 2017 study. So if you're worried your boss thinks your efforts aren't good enough, then your boss says your work isn't good enough. This only reinforces your fear, says Drake. And so we see things were going on in Hamlet's mind. Should I do it? Should I not? Should I or should I not? So that was a type of procrastination too. Uncertainty, self-esteem was bothering him. He was anxious to be or not to be. Mental health conditions. This is another part of this. First, it was low self-esteem. Then there's the fear of failure. Now, mental health conditions. Some mental health conditions could also interfere with task and completion, such as avoidant personality disorder, which has to do with folks being so averse to rejection. They might avoid situations or tasks at all costs. They hate rejection. They're so against rejection. And I know none of us like rejection, but we can deal with it. We've learned to deal with it, and we've learned to make the best of it, and we're made to turn it around and make the best of it, okay? Make the best of it. Rejection is the beginning of perfection, I do believe, okay? Hey, I just said that. I haven't heard anybody say that. I just said that. Avoidant personality disorder, which has to do with folks being so averse to rejection, they might avoid situations or tasks at all costs that involve interpersonal exchanges. It could be a date or a time sensitive work project. And there's so many people who their efforts have been What is it? Stunted because of other people and the fear of rejection from other people. Avoidant personality disorder. Then we have ADHD. What is ADHD? Okay, we know ADHD. Procrastination means you voluntarily and habitually postpone things you need to do, even if you get in trouble for it. It may sound similar if you live with ADHD. And that's attention deficit disorder. I think people used to call it that. But there are so many things that can stop people and stop you from doing things. But I tell you one thing, uh, anyway, ADHD can challenge folks when it comes to any or all stages of tasks due to brain differences with executive function, which often causes anxiety and overwhelm. Bipolar disorder manic episodes feature a common symptom, a sudden flight of ideas, often started more than one project or endeavor and not finishing them. Someone might not notice the incompleteness while another feels intense anxiety over the unfinished endeavor or endeavors. And so then we go on how to overcome your fear. 3 minutes. How to overcome your fear and finish what you started. Here we go. How can you finish if you don't start? Okay? So in Hamlet's situation, he had to make a decision. He was trying to decide, should I not? Should I not? So evidently he did not do the suicide at that point. Okay, so he did make a decision, whether he thought he made it or not. So how to overcome your fear and finish what you started? If you're prone to anxiety and procrastination and fear of completing simple tasks, there are ways you can overcome your fear. Here are a few suggestions. Try to identify the root cause of anxiety. You have to know where it starts from, what causes it, in order to be able to deal with it. The first thing you could consider is identifying the source of your anxiety, says Brandon. University understanding, says Brandon, okay? Understanding where your anxiety comes from can help you find a way to manage it. To help you connect the dots, you can take a moment to think about where this anxiety may stem from. You might realize your fear of completing tasks comes from a lack of support at home or insecurity you have from getting negative feedback in the past. And I tell you, some people are so evil, they can just, if they know you have some type of inhibition, they will just work on it and work on it and work on it. But today we say no more of that. No more of it. If that's the root cause, get rid of it. Get rid of it, okay? By avoiding it, staying away from it, not letting people feed negativity into you. Break down tasks into smaller parts. Break your tasks down if you have to do them a little bit of time. Then you create a schedule. Consider scheduling your to-dos into your day and throughout your week like you would an appointment. The benefit of scheduling is that it sets a good date of when that project will be completed. That's what Drake says, okay? Now, time management strategies for students may give options with day theming, time blocking, time boxing, and task batching. All right, so now we're going to do a recap. If you have anxiety about completing tasks, then you may have completion anxiety. This is when you fear or worry you will not perform well on your task. Your angst may interfere with getting your work done due to low self-esteem or fear of failure, mental health conditions where symptoms include anxiety or challenges with tasks. You can overcome your roadblock and finish what you've started by identifying the cause of anxiety, breaking down tasks, creating a schedule. Completion anxiety will take some self-awareness and perseverance, but with the mindfulness and sound strategies, you can learn to manage your anxiety, overcome any fears, and finish what you start. So if you watch the play Hamlet, if you've watched it, if you've listened to it, evidently he made a decision, whether we think he made a decision or not. He said he didn't commit suicide, to be or not to be. So are you going to be you or be somebody else that somebody else wants you to be? To be or not to be? That is the question. I suggest that you be you and overcome all of the negativity. I love you so much. God willing, I'll be here and hopefully you'll get to see me on Thursday. I love you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with me.